Jonathon here, and welcome to Learn to Playthrough, and welcome to my workstation. Today we're going to be finishing the painting process with the painting of the night terrors and the void spiders. Where I'll be applying their first colors, the base coats, detailing and highlighting if needed, a wash to add some depth and realism, a basing, well at least one of them, to give a feel of the surroundings, and then finishing off with a lacquer to help protect. Now during this painting process, think of it more as painting tips and tricks than actual painting. For the painting, this is geared towards someone who has picked up a paintbrush at least once. So I'll be painting any miniatures off camera and then returning to discuss the step-by-step of the painting I just did. This way you'll know what you're about to get into. But if you really need to see someone painting the night terrors and the void spiders, then you can head on over to the YouTube channel TabletopNoob to watch him paint these miniatures, the night terrors and the void spiders, paint by paint. And I'll go and leave the links down in the show notes where you can find the videos. As for the tips and tricks, these are geared towards all levels of painters, as you can never stop learning. So with that, just go ahead and sit back, relax, and enjoy. Now before we begin the painting process, let's talk doing your due diligence, as looks can be deceiving. So recently, I ran out of this Tester's blue and white label spray lacquer and had to go to several hobby stores to find some. And I thought that this Tester spray lacquer was the only type to get. As years ago when I first started my painting journey, I was looking around to find out what to get to dull down my miniatures, and most people would just say, pick up Tester spray lacquer. So off to the hobby store I went, found the Tester's spray lacquer, came home, sprayed it onto the miniatures, everything looked great. Well, as I said, several years later here, I ran out of the Tester spray lacquer, so back to the hobby store I went. And this is what I ended up finding, some Tester's spray lacquer. Alright, well it's a different label, but should be the same stuff. So I went ahead and sprayed it on, and then went back a couple hours later to check out the miniatures that I sprayed them on, and they were glossy. And I'm like, what the heck? It should be the same stuff, right? Well, I took the can, turned it around to find out above the UPC, it reads 1261T gloss coat. I'm like, gloss coat? What the heck is this? So I take the one from a while ago, I turn that around, I find a sticker on the cap and it reads 1260 dull coat. I'm like, oh no. So I've been using a dull coat and I bought a gloss coat. So back to the hobby store I went. And I get there and I find this. Tester spray lacquer. I'm like, wait a second, it's the same label. So I turn it around, and above the UPC it reads 1260T dull coat. Oh, so I got a dull coat and I got a gloss coat. But what's that T? So I went ahead and I contacted Tester's customer service, which, by the way, they've been bought out by Rust-Oleum. And I talked to them and I said, what is up with that T? And they said that it's pretty much just a labeling that they put a T in there now. So you have the 1261T gloss coat and the 1260T dull coat. And there's two ways that you can tell the difference. And one is a permanent way, that above that UPC it reads 1261T gloss coat and then 1260T dull coat for the dull coat. The second way, which is not a permanent way, is that the 1261T gloss coat, it has a clear cap. And the 1260T dull coat, it has a semi-transparent cap. So I went ahead and took the dull coat, sprayed it over the miniatures that had the gloss coat on it, and it dulled down the gloss coat, and everything seemed to work out pretty good. So in this experience, I noticed that in my painting videos, I've been saying, and then for the protecting, I'm going to be using the spray-on varnish from Testors, the spray lacquer that I have, a matte varnish to dull down the miniatures. So this statement was said wrong due to lack of knowledge and experience, as I kept inserting the word varnish in there, which it is not. It is a lacquer. Now after this experience, I will be saying, and then for the protecting, I'm going to be using the spray lacquer from Testors, a dull coat, to dull down the miniatures. So in the end, do your due diligence and look all the way around the spray can so your miniatures will be nice to you. Well, that should do it for now. I got plenty more miniatures to paint, so plenty of tips coming your way. So first up in the painting process are the night tears. After analyzing the night terrors, I'll be painting the night terrors in 3 steps. Since there is no painting guide that I can use as a reference for what the night terrors look like or what colors to use, I have found several pictures to use as a reference, including the enemy record sheet. For the paints, I'm going to be using some that came with the Shadows of Brimstone Heroes of the Old West paint set, and these are identified by the Western Lawman on the front of the bottle. Also some that came from the Shadows of Brimstone Creatures of the Void paint set, and these are identified by the Hellbat on the front of the bottle. And then some that I found in the Army Painter Mega paint set, and these are identified by the color-filled hexagon on the front of the bottle. So now that we're ready to go, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 1. In step 1, we'll be applying those first colors, the base coats, to 4 areas. And we got the body, and then the shoulder scales, which goes from one shoulder across the back to the other shoulder and on top of the head. And then the mouth on the inside, and then the base rim. For the body, I'll be using Portal Blue, and then for the shoulder scales, I'll be using Uniform Gray, and then for the mouth on the inside and the base rim, I'll be using Matte Black. Okay, so with all that information and paints ready to go, let's go ahead and start painting our base coats with step 1. Hello there, and welcome back as we just finished up our step 1 of applying those first colors, the base coats, to our night terrors. And overall, I'm fairly happy with the results, as the body's Portal Blue seems a bit too dark, and wondering how dark it's going to get after the wash is applied. So let's go ahead and push forward to see what happens. Now, when painting the body, the right arm does come across and close to the chest, so if you're going to be painting a different color in there, then just be careful. Luckily for me, everything was the same color. But trying to get a large paintbrush in there, that is a different story. Then I had a problem seeing those shoulder scales with just the primer on them, so I decided to go ahead and paint everything Portal Blue, which actually let me see the shoulder scales a lot better, as the molding of the shoulder scales aren't the greatest. Then I painted the shoulder scales and they turned out pretty good. Okay, so now that the base coats are applied, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 2. And for step 2, we'll be applying the touch-ups, detailing, highlighting, and adding a wash. And for the entire model, I'll be going and doing some touch-ups if needed. And then for the detailing, for the eyes, I'll be applying cinder yellow. And then detailing the teeth, I'll be applying spirit white. And then for the detailing of the claws, both on the hands and the feet, I'll be applying uniform gray. And then for the highlighting overall, I'll be applying spirit white. And then for the wash, I'll go ahead and apply some dark tone ink. So with all that information and paints ready to go, let's go ahead and continue on with step 2. Hello there and welcome back as we just finished up step 2 with our touch-ups, detailing, highlighting, and a wash to our night terrors. Step 2 finished up pretty smooth and very pleased with step 2 as once again the wash really blends everything together. So let's go ahead and take a look at the night terrors to see what we did. First up are the touch-ups. Now, other than those shoulder scales having to be ad-libbed in several areas, not too many areas bled over. So overall, not that bad. Next for the detailing, I detailed 3 areas. First, I gave the night terrors some bright yellow eyes with some cinder yellow. I should have did a reverse painting and paint the eyes first during the base coating and then paint on the body's portal blue, as the angle to paint on the portal blue was better than the angle of the cinder yellow. So this would have reduced the amount of touch-ups I had to do. So do a paintless brushing to find a good angle to know what area or areas to paint first. Second, I gave the night terrors some pearly white teeth with some spirit white. This time I did a reverse painting as I wanted black between the teeth instead of having the wash trying to fill in the gaps. So I painted black over all of the teeth and the gaps first, and then came back with spirit white for the teeth. Now sometimes the white would overlap onto the black gaps, but then I would just use either a sharpened toothpick, my X-Acto knife, or a needle to lightly scratch the white off of the black to produce the gap. And then third, I gave the night terrors some claws with some uniform gray. Now, out of the 24 claws that I painted on the night terrors' hands, I only had to improvise 1 claw by painting something at the end of their finger. And out of the 24 claws that I painted on the night terrors' feet, since they did have some huge claws there, I didn't have to improvise any claws by painting something at the end of their toes. Then for the highlighting, I highlighted all over the night terrors with some spirit white. And finally, I applied a wash with the dark tone ink, which added some good depth to the night terrors. Well, that's going to do it for step 2. And with our final step remaining, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 3. In step 3, we'll be doing the basing and protecting of the miniatures. For the basing, I have a lot of area to work with, so I'm going to be adding some gravel, big rocks, and a dead bush. And then for the protecting, I'm going to be using the spray lacquer from Testors, a dull coat to dull down the miniatures. So with all that information, spray and other items ready to go, let's go ahead and finish our miniatures with step 3. Hello there, and welcome back as we just finished up step 3 with our basing and protecting of our night terrors. Step 3 finished up pretty quick as there was a lot of room to work with and found some good locations for that dead bush and those big rocks to be placed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the night terrors to see what we did. For the basing, I had plenty of areas to place a dead bush and some big rocks, so I moved them around in a couple of areas to see what would look good. Then when I was happy with what would work for the dead bush and big rocks, I glued them in place. Now as you can see, I placed the dead bush into a little action scene by placing the dead bush in the middle of a pile of big and small rocks, as if before the bush died it had pushed its way up through the pile, and then also placed a big rock behind the night terror. Then I took the super glue and placed some on the remaining areas of the base, and then used a toothpick to spread it around, being careful not to get it on the base rim so that when you touch up the base rim it won't look too tacky. So with the super glue spread all around on the base, I took the night terror off of the dowel and slid its base under the gravel. I then fully covered the base with some gravel and then used the end of my X-Acto knife to stamp the gravel down into the super glue instead of letting it sit on top. This way the super glue would hold better onto the gravel. And once there is enough gravel into the super glue, I then put the night terror back onto the dowel and then gave the dowel several taps to knock off any excess gravel. Now, other than the excess gravel, as you can see in the picture, you could also have some extra gravel hanging over the edge of the base and onto the rim of the base. So then I went ahead and just rubbed my thumb along the rim of the base, knocking off any overhanging gravel. And once the gravel is cleaned up, I went ahead and cut the dead bush by cutting it at different angles. I went ahead and cut it high, cut it low, left, right, cut it upward, downward, so that the dead bush would look like a normal looking dead bush. Then after I cut the dead bush to a good height, I then used my X-Acto knife to spread out the bush to make it look a bit fuller. I just went ahead and took the X-Acto knife and put it right down into the bush, and then just bent it over one way and then the other, and then changed the angle and then bent the dead bush over, so this way that the dead bush looked a bit fuller. Then when you're all happy with the basing, to protect the miniatures, I'm going to be using the spray lacquer from Testors, a dull coat, to dull down the miniatures. Now as you can see in the picture, after you spray on the lacquer, there is a nice shine to your miniature. But just go ahead and give it a few minutes and the gloss goes away and you got yourself a nice looking dulled down finished night terror. And there you have it, our night terrors. All the way from assembly to primed, step 1, step 2, and finally step 3. Now with the night terrors complete, let's go ahead and continue on with the void spiders. After analyzing the void spiders, I'll be painting the void spiders in 3 steps. Now before I begin, when I first introduced the void spiders at the start of the video, they had a white-black primer look to them which represented the highlights and the shadows. But I decided to go ahead and change the primer, as when I've been painting previous miniatures, I ended up painting the base coat solid so there would be no transparency to see the underlying primer. So in the end, it really wouldn't matter what color you used for your primer. Now, since I'm going to be painting the Void Spider Spirit White and a light blue color, I went ahead and reprimed the void spiders with white so that the painting of the base coats would be faster and no worries if the primer was bleeding through. Now, since there is no painting guide that I can use as a reference for what the void spiders look like or what colors to use, I have found several pictures to use as a reference, including the enemy record sheet. For the paints, I'm going to be using some that came with the Shadows of Brimstone Heroes of the Old West paint set. And these are identified by the Western Lawman on the front of the bottle. And one that I found in the Army Painter Mega Paint set. And this one is identified by the color-filled hexagon on the front of the bottle. So now that we're ready to go, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 1. In step 1, we'll be applying those first colors, the base coats, to 3 areas. We got the body and legs on top, the body and the legs on the bottom, and the mouth on the inside. For the body and legs on top, I'll be applying some Spirit White. And then for the body and legs on the bottom, I'll be applying some Spirit White mixed with a tinge of Portal Blue. And then for the mouth on the inside, I'll be applying some Matte Black. Okay, so with all that information and paints ready to go, let's go ahead and start painting our base coats with step 1. Hello there and welcome back as we just finished up our step 1 of applying those first colors, the base coats, to our void spiders. And overall there was a good and a bad. For the good, the applying of the base coats went by fairly smoothly. And for the bad, the painting of a set of 12 at a time could take you quite a while. So take a deep breath, exhale, and just start painting away. Also, the void spiders are considered freestanding miniatures, which means that they don't come with a base. So I wasn't able to use a dowel with the poster tack on top to hold the miniature while I painted it. So what you can do is use a rubber glove. And this way no oil or grime from your fingers would transfer to the miniature, and also your fingers wouldn't possibly rub off any paint. Now, I did a little change of plans for one of the base coats, as the top of the void spiders were going to be white. But after analyzing the enemy record sheet a bit closer, I realized that what I thought was white on top is actually the same subtle blue shade from the bottom. So I went ahead and added some of the bottom's subtle blue color to the top. And it's looking good. So for both the top and the bottom of the void spiders, for that subtle blue look, I did a mixture of 3 parts Spirit White, and then a tinge, just a little bit, of Portal Blue, just enough to turn the white a shade of blue, and then 6 parts water. And finally for the mouth, I used matte black to fill in the spaces between the teeth. Okay, so now that the base coats are applied, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 2. So for step 2, we'll be doing some touch-ups, detailing, and some highlighting. For the entire model, I'll go ahead and do some touch-ups if needed. And then for the detailing, for the teeth, I'll be applying some Spirit White. And then detailing the lips, I'll be applying some Saloon Red. And finally, for the highlighting, overall, I'll be applying some Spirit White. So with all that information and paints ready to go, let's go ahead and continue on with step 2. Hello there and welcome back as we just finished up step 2 with our touch-ups, detailing, and some highlighting to our void spiders. Step 2 finished up very, yeah, let's just say still taking quite a while. So keep taking those deep breaths. So let's go ahead and take a look at the void spiders to see what we did. First up are the touch-ups. Now, there wasn't that many areas that bled over that bad, so just finished them up quickly and continued on. Next, for the detailing, I detailed 2 areas. First, I gave the void spiders some pearly white teeth with some spirit white, and the molding of the teeth looked pretty good before I painted, but when I went with the flow of what the molding of the teeth provided, I sometimes ended up giving the void spiders some crazy looking teeth. And then second, I gave the void spiders some nice looking lips with some saloon red. And once again, not too good on the molding, so had to occasionally add lib where I thought the location of the lips would be. Now, they do seem a bit big in some areas, but they work. And finally, for the highlighting, I highlighted all over the void spiders with some spirit white. Well, that's going to do it for step 2, and with our final step remaining, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 3. In step 3, we'll only be doing the protecting of the miniatures, and reason being, as I said earlier, the void spiders are considered freestanding miniatures, which means they don't come with a base, so no need for basing. For the protecting, I'm going to be using the spray lacquer from Testors, a dull coat to dull down the miniatures. So with all that information, spray and other items ready to go, let's go ahead and finish our miniatures with step 3. Hello there and welcome back as we just finished up step 3 with our protecting of our void spiders. Step 3 finished up really quick as there really wasn't a lot to do. Just the spraying of the spray lacquer since there was no need for a basing. So let's go ahead and take a look at the void spiders to see what we did. Now, when you're all happy with what you did so far, for the protecting, I'm going to be using the spray lacquer from Testors, a dull coat, to dull down the miniatures. Now, as you can see in the picture, after you spray on the lacquer, there is a nice shine to your miniature. But just go ahead and give it a few minutes and the gloss goes away, and you got yourself a nice looking dulled down finished void spider. And there you have it, our void spiders. All the way from assembly to primed, step 1, step 2, and finally step 3. Well, that should do it. That's going to complete the painting of the night terrors and the void spiders. Now that our enemies are all in color and ready to go, let's go ahead and get our enemies back down to the gaming table for some more action.